It seems like every rare, infrequent review I post here is in a different format and style, and I apologize for that. I'm not going to come up with excuses about this, it's just my own shortcomings. Anyway, I decided to just kick back and be more relaxed in this new style I'm going to try out. Don't expect much editing, don't expect too many visuals. I'd rather just get my thoughts out as soon as possible for people than spend days and days writing, recording, and editing. Also, a couple of side notes, I'm not going to be giving out ratings. I have them for my personal records and they're on my IMDb and Letterboxd. But to me, the general idea of these videos is to give you my thoughts. If you just want my scores and nothing else, feel free to follow me on sites like IMDb and Letterboxd, which I'll put in the description. So here's my hopefully sticking series, thoughts, opinions, and rambles. Here's hoping it's not too pretentious. Critics often use the term meditative as a synonym for long and slow, and rarely does film ever actually meditate on anything. The definition of meditate is to think deeply or focus one's mind for a period of time in silence or with the aid of chanting for religious or spiritual purposes or as a method of relaxation. The most recent film to be deemed meditative is David Lowery's A Ghost Story, and in this case, I think the term genuinely fits. It's a long, slow period of time that focuses on certain subjects, and for the most part, the events happen in silence while also helping, for me personally, to relax on things that I've been sort of worrying about. As an actual meditation on life, death, and the afterlife, A Ghost Story is one of the most accurate uses of the word in recent memory. The film is very unique, and I can't say that there are too many other movies like it. The film implements a lot of long takes, which will likely make a lot of people very annoyed and angry with the film. I do think that these long takes do drag on a bit at times, but I understand that it's part of the film's general tone on meditation. Like I said as well, the film mostly plays in silence, another aspect that I'm sure people will be mad at, but I really enjoyed the risks this film took to achieve the tone that it wanted, and I think that for the most part it played off really, really well. There are a couple of scenes of dialogue that I do think seem against type for the film. I get why they happen within the context of the scenes, but for the style, I think that they sort of clash a bit. In particular, there's a scene where a guy gives a rant on the universe, and it gives us an idea to think about, but it just felt jarring compared to the rest of the quiet, slow universe that the film had set itself up for. It also just felt a bit obvious for a film that's so greatly subtle and lets the audience think for itself about life and death. I won't particularly say that the performances throughout were phenomenal, since Casey Affleck wears a sheet for most of the film and doesn't have any spoken lines while under that sheet, so it's hard to tell. In a general sense though, good emotion was conveyed by him to the audience for the story through the sheet, despite it. Rooney Mara was pretty great, and in one of the film's more potentially aggravating scenes where she consumes a baked pastry dish, she does a lot of very subtle work that anybody paying attention can see what is going on with her. The remaining supporting characters don't have all that much to do, but they also never broke the vibe of the film and the scenes that they were given. To be fair, I'm not the best judge of performances and acting, but I generally have a sense of when I find a character to be convincing and realistic within the context of the world the film is set in. And in that regard, I think the acting works well here. The main things that I took away from A Ghost Story loving were the direction and the blissfully melancholic message that the film gave me. Lowery does a great job keeping a consistent tone that I personally enjoyed a whole lot. He's great at shot composition and staging of these simplified sequences. By the way, the cinematography was superb, simplicity at some of its finest, and I dig the Polaroid snapshot aspect ratio, which works hand in hand with what the film is going for. These are snapshots, these are images of life after death. We see everything through a lens, so the aspect ratio plays into that. It may also be a play on how we live our lives today. So often nowadays we find ourselves taking pictures of what we're doing. I'm guilty of this, but I also don't think it's especially a bad thing. We use the camera for a way of life capturing memories, and with the film, we sort of reverse that, with the memory of someone capturing the life that goes on after they're no longer a part of it. The storytelling this film implements is very subtle. It's a movie that, when I think about what happened, it seems like much more happened than what actually did. After the credits started rolling, I thought to myself, not much really happened in this movie, but now that I've started thinking about it, there's a lot of quiet things that are going on if you're paying attention, and really thinking about what happened from a more dreamy sort of way. For example, Affleck's ghost is trying to see what his wife wrote and hid in a wall, and he spends a good amount of time scratching the wall to try to get at it. It seems impossible, so we think, okay, he's a ghost, he can't affect the physical world. But we also see that he's able to haunt a family that moves into the house and has a fit of rage throwing dishes across the kitchen. So then, what's keeping him from getting the note in the wall? If you think abstractly about what is going on here, there are a couple ways to take it. One might be that it's a metaphor for something physical holding him from letting go. In the same vein, it could mean that he doesn't want to let go, under the belief that the two will see each other again. There are multiple ways to think about the several events that happen in the movie, and please let me know in the comments what your interpretation of some of the events mean. I actually read the comments, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts on this film. In particular, if you have seen the movie, what do you believe Mara's character wrote? It's never shown in the movie, and nobody in the cast and crew knows what Rooney Mara wrote. Even she forgot what she had written on there. I suppose in terms of story, the subject of seeing life without you in it isn't anything particularly new, nor is the moral of holding on to things that have passed, but I feel that this film covered them in a new and interesting way. There's a lot of things in the film that can be interpreted in different ways, and it all depends on your personal outlook. I also just personally enjoy something that I had feared from watching the trailer. Upon watching the trailer, I thought the film might try to be all around one of those life-affirming, shove down your throat just how beautiful and meaningful the movie you're watching is, to a point where it sort of boils down to a sort of religious pep talk. Instead, while there is an air of spirituality to the film, it did feel like an actual thought-provoking sermon, I guess, told through visuals and more of the emotion that carries the events that happen rather than the actions of the events themselves. On the whole, A Ghost Story really works in many aspects. The direction and style lend themselves to a euphoric and ethereal experience, to a story about life, death, time, and holding on. It's wrapped in subtlety for the most part. It's an honest-to-God thought-provoking meditation. It's wonderful to look at. It's a unique experience that I encourage seeing in a theater to give yourself the most intimate space possible. It will make you think and feel in a new sort of way. It has some minor issues, but it's just a beautiful little film that I personally enjoyed a whole lot. It won't be for everybody because of its truly meditative style, but I almost commend the film for sticking to what it wanted to do and not worrying so much about if general audiences would latch onto it quite as easily. It's a touching and personal experience that the meanings of the events that go on in the movie are mostly up to interpretation, and as long as the director knows what they're doing with that up-to-interpretation style, it's always something that I love in a movie. If you're looking for a mesmerizing meditation on the general subjects the film covers, this is definitely something that you'll want to see. This was the most artistic episode of Goosebumps I've ever seen.